Thank you everyone for joining us to the latest In-House in Focus session. So I'm Peter Wainman. I'll be presenting. Sven is going to be doing most of the talking today, and we'll introduce ourselves in a moment in more detail. So housekeeping, a few points as ever. So we will send round a link to the recording and the slides for the presentation afterwards. And you can also get access to the webinar through our website and YouTube and so on later. If you've got any questions during the webinar, usual format, please put it into the Q&A. If we have time, we will answer some of those questions at the end. It may be, depending on how many of those questions there are or how hard they are to answer, we may park some of them, and we may come back to you later. To reassure you, you probably know this from doing these elsewhere. Nobody else will see your questions, and it's entirely up to you whether you ask them anonymously or not. But Sven and I will see them and pick them up later. As always, please do give us feedback. It's great to hear any thoughts, particularly on future topics that you'd be interested in, or areas of concern for you. But any feedback, always very useful to us. That will, again, I think the link goes around straight afterwards. We do have a pretty full schedule in terms of In-House in Focus during the course of the year, but it's always great to get that get that feedback as we go, so that we can develop our thinking. I think that's it on the housekeeping. So just a little bit from me. So I'm those who don't know me, I've done a few of these before, probably quite a few if you do know me, but I'm one of the tech and data partners at Reeve, and my job really today is just to introduce Sven, who I'll talk more about in a moment. I thought I'd start by explaining why we're talking about AI again. I think we've talked about AI in a number of different ways in different sessions. It's fair to say it's still the theme of the moment. I think it was notable last week that amongst the various announcements that the UK government was making on strategy and future of the civil service and the health service, they're still focusing on AI as one of the key ways of delivering the kind of efficiency savings and improvements that they're talking about. Keir Starmer talked about it, about the golden opportunity of artificial intelligence. Again, and I got the quote, no person's substantive time should be spent on a task where digital can do it better, quicker, and to the same high quality and standard. I might have said more quickly rather than quicker, but I get the general idea. I think it's very much seen as the opportunity to move to technology, and particularly AI where possible from a UK government strategic point of view. Last night here, I'm in Cambridge. We hosted the launch event for the Cambridge Tech Week, and Cambridge Tech Week this year is also going to be themed on AI. We had a panel session here in the office from various people from industry, from the university, and from local government, talking about the future of AI, and talking around some of the issues around for the public service use of AI, and some of the risks around AI and whether it's being best targeted at the moment. So I think it's still very much the theme of the moment. I was talking to one founder of an early stage company last night, and he was giving me an example of how he's used it in his business, not in his product. He's written 100 grant applications in the last 12 months to get his business off the ground, and he said ChatGPT has made that process a whole lot easier for him, because he ends up reusing a lot of the same content. And as a founder of a very small business getting it off the ground, I can see how that might work. So why are we talking about the EU AI Act today? Sven's going to talk more about it in a moment, but we realised that it is relevant for a lot of our clients and a lot of people operating in the UK, either because they have operations that are in the EU and are affected by the legislation, or because they are interested in the direction of travel on AI regulation. Obviously what the EU does is going to be very relevant to the potential direction of travel for the UK. So we thought it was particularly timely given the implementation this year, and Sven's going to talk more about what they've been doing around that in a moment. So I keep talking about Sven. Sven-Erik Holm is one of the tech data partners at Graf von Westphalen, and we've worked with Sven for years on tech and data things and refer work either direction between us frequently, work together on projects, meet up for a beer, and those who've worked with us for years will also know that we have a very strong relationship with Graf generally across a number of practice areas. So we are really pleased to have Sven on for this session, which, as I say, is very timely. Just to go back to those UK plans, the UK government, in terms of our regulation of AI, has very much talking still about making sure that there are opportunities for AI development in the UK, and about stimulating innovation and looking around regulation on a sector or an area basis rather than blanket regulation. But it's fair to say it's still a developing position in terms of what that's going to look like. We've got some principles. We do have some areas of regulation for AI in the UK already, and data protection, IP, and consumer law, and so on. But it's very much a sort of watch this space in terms of how that's going to go over the next couple of years. So it's going to be very interesting to hear from Sven on how things are going in the EU. So that's enough for me. For the rest of the session, over to Sven to talk about the EU AI Act. Thank you, Sven.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning from my side. My name is Sven-Erik Holm. As Peter already said, I'm an associated partner at GvW in Frankfurt, Germany, and I'm part of our tech and data practice area. We decided to call it like Mills and Reeve calls it, tech and data. Before that, it was IT and data protection, which is clearly not true anymore, because the data part is more than data protection, as we will talk about today. It's about processing of data and the commercialization of data and the use of data in different ways, and not only data protection, even if data protection still will have big impact even on AI processing of data. And that's why I want to start with a preliminary remark regarding data protection and AI. As in many of the new EU laws, like the Data Act and the Cyber Resilience Act and so on, and the AI Act, the GDPR remains unaffected, which means it stays independently alongside the AI Act. And especially in case of AI, the GDPR contains some strict regulation about automated decision-making, which would one of the obvious use cases for AI. But it's almost in any cases forbidden under the GDPR if legal consequences for people are related to this automated decision-making. So, and that's part of the AI Act, it's crucial that in the end, always a human being makes the decision about another human being. That's the background of this part of the regulation. Machines shall not decide about human beings. And now we can start with the AI Act. Next slide, please. I have a small agenda. We will start with the AI Act. That's the focus of today's session, and we will get into detail. And in the second part, I will give a quick outlook for further EU laws, especially the Cyber Resilience Act and the Data Act. And then I'm sure we'll have time for questions. Next slide. I think it's 2 slides. Yeah. So let's start with the scope. And that's why we're talking in this session about the EU AI Act, because it does not only apply to EU-based companies, like the GDPR as well. So Of course, if you're based in the EU and you use AI systems, or you import or distribute or manufacture AI systems in the EU, it will apply. But even if you're located outside the EU and you're selling your product, which is an AI system, to the EU, the AI Act will apply. And even if the output of the AI is used in the European Union, then the AI Act applies to whatever you're doing with the output of your AI system. That's like the GDPR, because the European lawmakers, the EU lawmakers, to be precise, want to avoid that, especially US-based companies do whatever they want, and then they can sell their products to the European Union. That's why they decided for this approach. If you're selling your AI product to the EU, or the output is going to be used in the EU, then the AI Act applies. There are some exceptions regarding scientific research and development and the testing of AI systems. So if you're still in the testing phase of your product before it's launched publicly, then the AI Act does not apply. And if you're a scientific researcher and you're developing whatever with AI, then there will be an exception for the application of the AI Act, which will make it a lot easier, because as we will see on the next slide, please, there are quite a few things to do if you want to use AI in the European Union or to sell your AI system. So the AI Act wants to protect the fundamental rights of the people in the European Union. So it's like the understanding of data protection in the European Union. It's a fundamental right to protect the data. And in case of the AI Act, people must be protected against discriminatory, manipulative, and otherwise harmful AI practices. That's why all of these things are forbidden since the 2nd of February this year, but we will come to this on the next slides. And they want to no, sorry, that was a mistake. Let's go back one slide. I wanted just to say that this will be subject to the next slides. But the EU lawmakers in Brussels, they are quite sure that the AI Act will help the AI economy in the European Union, because from their point of view, if there are clear rules and transparency obligations and information obligations when using and developing AI, then the people will trust the AI systems more than they would if they would not know what is happening inside the AI. And that's how they want to have more competition on the AI market, but with strict rules within the area of application, meaning especially within the EU. But as I said, also for AI companies from outside the EU, that they don't have any advantage when selling their products to companies in the EU. And that's why, in the end, it's some kind of global application as long as it's used in the European Union, the system itself or the output. Now, next slide, please. And the AI Act works with different categories of risk. So you will always ask yourself the question, is my system, or what I'm going to do with my system, which kind of risk category is it in? And the most important one for now is the category of unacceptable risk, because that's forbidden since the 2nd of February. And there are really, really high fines if you're still using prohibited AI practices. And to name two examples, social rating systems and manipulative AI, which means especially if the AI is recognizing emotions of people, to misuse the output for whatever. If I know the person I'm negotiating with is angry before I can normally see as a human being that he's angry or scared or whatever, but my computer is telling me your partner you're negotiating with is getting angry, this would be some kind of prohibited AI practice, which is definitely prohibited since the 2nd of February this year. And the risk to get a fine in Germany especially is quite low because we don't have a supervisory authority yet. As some of you might know, we don't even have a federal government at the moment. But as soon as we will have a new federal government, they will have to take the decision which will be the supervisory authority for the AI Act. And then this might be a real risk for companies in Germany. In other EU member states, they already have supervisory authorities for AI. So keep this in mind. There are some practices which are strictly forbidden. Then we have the high risk category. That's most of the regulation within the AI Act is dealing with high risk AI. So if your system is falling into this category, the effort you have to do to use this kind of system legally is quite high. And then we have the limited risk, which is something like chatbots or deepfakes. I mean, deepfake sounds quite risky, but what it's meant, it's in most cases quite obvious that some kind of deepfake is a deepfake. So it can definitely be in a high risk, but that's the difficulty of the AI Act to decide in which category of risk is my system falling or what I'm doing with my system. But in the end, the limited risk category means you have to tell the people you're interacting with or who are interacting with your AI system that they are interacting with an AI system. Many of our clients are using AI voice bots just to have a so that they need no personal going on the phone on their hotline. And the first thing this voice bot says is, "Hi, I'm whatever name. I'm an AI voice bot, and I want to handle your problem." And that's basically the most important obligation. If it's a limited risk, you have to ensure that everybody knows they are interacting with AI. And for all categories, it's important that a human being at least performs some kind of spot checks to be sure that the AI is working correctly and not telling that your competitor is doing a lot of bad things and stuff like that, because this could happen, and it already happened, because the AI is learning in some kind of way at least. And so this needs to be supervised by a human being. The lowest risk category, for example, spam filters, or in video games, there is already AI working, and that's almost not regulated at all. But this could change if the AI part in a spam filter or in a video game becomes bigger and bigger, and then they could transfer into the limited or even the high risk area, depending on what the AI is actually doing. Next slide, please. And to be sure what you as a company has to do, it's really important to know which kind of role you have in the AI world. So there are definitely developers of AI, there will be providers, retailer of AI, and there will be companies which only use AI. And depending on which role you have as a company, the obligations differ what you have to do. But that's not that easy as it might sound, because if you are using AI, let's say you're a manufacturing company and you have personnel going to your clients, checking for whatever machine you have sold to your customer. And if your personnel is using AI to do the maintenance check or to solve any issues or to automatically order spare parts, this might be not only using AI, it could be at least the provision of AI to your customers, which would lead to more obligations regarding transparency and information obligation. And the biggest problem is there are no guidelines yet, which you could use to make this kind of decision. So for the moment, to be on the safe side, you always have to make the assumption, I'm not only a user, I might be a provider, as long as there's no real guideline you can use to make this decision based on whatever the supervisory authorities on a local or the European level will decide in the future. So that's mainly what we are doing right now with our clients, helping them to decide which role they have. And for the moment, we try to be on the safe side. And that's why we say, better you inform more, you're more transparent as you would be as a mere user. But retrospectively, there could be a supervisory authority which says you're being a provider since day one, and you have not fulfilled your obligations regarding transparency and information of the clients. Yeah, that's really, especially in Germany, it might be different in other European member states, but in Germany, we are really, really waiting for a supervisory authority and some guidelines, because our clients want to start, they want to use AI, but they do not want to go in the wrong direction with a lot of effort, time, and money, just to be informed from us in X time that everything we did was wrong, and we have to do it again. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, go back again. I forgot one thing. The general purpose AI. What is general purpose AI? ChatGPT, Copilot, DeepSeek, Mistral, meaning the big LLM systems, which can be used for almost everything, and not only for one specific purpose. That's why they call general purpose AI. And the problem is, since they can be used for everything, it could be a small risk, it could be a low risk, it could be a high risk, or even a forbidden AI practice. That's why it's so difficult if you, for example, provide your employees with the opportunity to use ChatGPT or Copilot, or we as a law firm, we use some special law AI. But in the end, it's really important to educate your employees so that they know what they are doing might be risky, might be even forbidden. So you have to establish the rules within your company, what your employees are allowed to do with the general purpose AI, because you will not know before what they are doing. This might be different, for example, with something like DeepL, which has only the purpose to translate. That's quite easy to regulate. But if you take Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, you don't know what your people are doing with it. So you have to establish some kind of AI policy. And now on the next slide, please. That's one of the obligations which is already really in force. So to start, in August last year, the AI Act came into force, and after 6 months, 2nd of February this year, the first real obligations came into force. And that's basically the prohibited AI practices title. So they are forbidden since the 2nd of February. and the part of the AI Act which obliges companies to educate the people using AI. So since the 2nd of February, every employee in the European Union is obliged to have webinars, some kind of information. It can be in written form, but it should be in some kind of live format or webinar format to tell the people what are the rules, sorry, when using AI, and especially what are the risks when using AI, because all of the systems still have the problem with hallucinations. So the output could be wrong, could be made up entirely. So your people need to know how to use the output of AI systems. But in the first place, they have to know as well, what kind of data am I allowed to put in the AI? Am I allowed to use personal data? This could be a problem under the data protection law. Am I allowed to use some kind of music or books or other text? This could be trigger copyright issues. So from all these different aspects, you are obliged to educate your employees, the people within your company you are providing with AI with. And if you're not doing that or using forbidden AI, this could lead to a fine of 35 million euro or 7% of the global annual turnover. And if you're part of a big group of companies, then it will be the turnover of the whole group of companies, not only the one entity which made the mistake. So now everybody can check the numbers. This could be a real big fine, and that's why we are currently mainly helping our clients to decide which role they have, which kind of risk category their systems fall in, and to perform the education of their people. So we're doing a lot of webinars. We're going to our clients. We have some special formats for, let's say, the pharma healthcare sector, because if you're using AI within these area around clinical studies, for example, it's obviously even more regulated under data protection and the healthcare and pharma laws, but also under the AI Act. And so that's the biggest part of our daily work right now. There will be in a few months, that's the second point, but it's not really relevant for individual companies. But the EU AI office, and if there is any local supervisor authority, they will have to produce codes of conduct for branches, practice areas, issue guidelines. So we are especially waiting for this deadline. We don't know how far they are, what they already have done. It's some kind of a black box, especially in Germany, as I said. And the next step for you as users, providers, or developers of AI will be August this year, when everything around the general purpose AI, especially with high risks, enters into force. There will be a lot of risk mitigating obligations, even more transparency and information obligations. So that's what some of our clients, because many will definitely not using general purpose AI with high risks, but some will or are already doing it. So we are developing even more guidelines, handouts for their clients, for end users, and so on, to be prepared for the 2nd of August this year. And then 1 year later, August 26, the whole AI Act will enter into force. And then 12 months later, there's one addition. There might be extension of the scope of the AI Act if in other EU laws there might be some provisions which say whatever they are dealing with, but this is handled like AI under the AI Act. So it's some kind of preparation from the EU lawmakers if there are any parts in other EU laws in the future that they can go back and reference to the AI Act. Next slide, please. Sorry. Yeah, and since it's already in my time zone, 12:30, I will just give you a quick outlook. There are more EU acts, like the Cyber Resilience Act, which is part of the cybersecurity strategy of the European Commission. So if you're selling products, hardware or software, to the European Union, or you are even producing them in the European Union, there will be even more obligations regarding the security of these products, which will come into force this year, next year, sorry. So there's still time, but you like in other EU provisions already written down, you have to provide the information around what kind of security measures your products have or what the users can do. So it's a lot around security and informing people about cyber security and the resilience of your products. But let's go to the next slide, please. I mean, you can read this afterwards. I want to just go to the Data Act. Next slide, please. Yes, and the Data Act came into force early last year, and it will enter into real obligations in September this year. And the Data Act, some of our clients made the mistake and they thought it's another kind of data protection law, but it's the opposite, to be honest. Companies will be obliged to share their data, not only personal data. The scope is if I have some IoT device and this IoT device is generating data when I, as a customer, use it, then I have to get access to these data. And in some cases, even your competitors will get access and the government as well. So that's highly disputed in Germany still if this might be a violation of business and trade secrets, which are fundamental rights as well, at least in Germany. So it's more about sharing data and the obligation to share data with your customers and even with your competitors or the government. So this will be one of the big things for summer this year and after that, but from a slightly different point of view. And I think it might be even more important for our clients than the AI Act, because handing over your data to your competitors or the government is definitely not a thing they like to do. Next slide, and I think we are almost done. Yeah, next slide, please. And I think we would take some questions when I look on my watch to at least have 10 minutes. So thank you for your patience, and I hope it was at least a bit useful.
That's been great. Thank you very much. And yeah, I've been watching the questions come through as you've been speaking. So I'm going to start with one of my own, but it slightly links to a few of the questions that other people have asked. So we've certainly found that over the years we've had to advise a number of times on clients outside the UK and outside the EU on the extraterritorial application of the data protection GDPR laws. It sounds as though that the similar questions are going to come up on
Yep.
the EU AI Act, and a number of the questions we've had from the audience are on that subject. Just first question from me: are you being asked that question often at the moment? Are you advising people outside of the EU? Are they coming to you to say, I'm worried about the application of the EU AI Act to me? Does it apply, or is that not really happening much yet? Is it mostly people in the EU who are getting their house in order?
It is happening. There are companies from outside the EU asking us questions about the AI Act and its application. But even companies within the EU are asking us if we use a product which comes from the United States, will the AI Act apply? That's an obvious yes. But yeah, there are definitely questions, especially about the part using the output in the EU, because that's even broader than the GDPR.
Yeah.
Because in case of the GDPR, you at least need some kind of anchor in the EU. It might be your establishment of an entity, or it might be a person being physically in the European Union. But you could do data processing completely outside of the European Union, but in some kind, the output will be used within the European Union, and then the AI Act applies. That's I couldn't imagine a broader application
Right.
of a law. Yeah.
And that was a question specifically on, and I think particularly somebody asked what's meant by whose output is used in the EU. And do we know what we mean by output, or are we going to have to wait for the guidelines to get more clarity on that? I mean, output in theory, could
Yeah.
that be a document,
To be
video,
absolutely
image, anything?
sure. To be absolutely sure, we will have to wait, at least for Germany, because we made in Germany always we have the problem that our supervisory authorities understand things different than in
Right.
Brussels or other member states. But the definition of output is simply what's coming out at the end of the AI. So if I'm asking ChatGPT or Copilot a question, then the answer is the output. If I have some kind of rating and or risk analysis, then whatever the answer in this case might be is the output. So if I use this output because the business decision is made within the European Union, but
Yeah.
my analysts in the United States have performed their AI analysis, and they say it's the risk is okay. Do decision A or B, and you decide based on this information. This could be triggering the part using the output in the European Union.
Right. That's helpful. We've got a couple of other questions on jurisdiction. So, would the AI Act apply if you're a UK company based in the UK and the product output is only used and sold in the UK, but the server the solution is deployed on is located in the EU? I mean, that may be again one that's hard to answer at this stage. But if both the if effectively the AI product is sat on a server in the EU, albeit that the underlying AI has been is being developed and used in the UK, would that still bring you within the Act?
I don't think so. So as long as everything stays within the UK, only the server is physically located in the European Union. This might trigger the GDPR. It could be the case, but I
Yeah,
don't think this would trigger the AI Act if
yeah.
it's definitely UK only and only the server outside of the UK.
And I'm going to pick another sort of jurisdictional one. What if your organization is based outside of the EU and you deploy internally within your organization some AI? You've got some employees who are working remotely from France or Germany. Would the organization and the AI system be caught under the scope of the Act because it's being used in France or Germany? I suspect I know the answer to that, but
It definitely could be, but that's really a difficult question. It's the same difficult question in the data protection area. We have lots of questions since COVID. People want to work remote wherever they want. So that's not that easy. It depends which kind of employees, what are they doing? Is it some kind of C-level, for example, making business decisions? This could, in each case, lead to a different assumption regarding the application of the AI Act, but it's definitely a question you should ask in these cases and to check with your local AI lawyer, depending on where in the European Union the people are going to work with the AI.
That makes sense. And again, a slightly different angle, but again, a couple of themes on guidance. And I think you've answered the question on this, but there are a couple of questions around guidance on categories of risk. So somebody said, will there be comprehensive guidance on what constitutes which category of risk? And will the responsibility for determining the level of risk be with the developer owner? And somebody else has also asked the question, can we have a list of what's high risk versus low risk scenarios so we can understand how to identify these? Is there any guidance available? Is there any, and is it going to be the job of the user developer to make that assessment?
That's a really good question. That there is no list yet. The AI Act has really long annexes, which are around 600 pages. There are some information that can help to decide which kind of risk category your system is dealing with, but we have to wait for real guidelines which would help in court, for example, because they come from a supervisory authority. But we are trying to if we know what an AI system is doing, we can at least quite sure say it's not high, it's not forbidden, or it's not regulated at all. But it's to be sure we have to wait for some official guidance. The really interesting question is who is responsible? Everybody who is in the chain, from the developer, distributor, retailer to the user. And that's why when you're using AI and you're buying AI from some kind of AI developer or retailer, you have to make sure that in your contracts, these cases are handled and addressed, and that there's some kind of indemnification clause. For example, if the information you got from your retailer or the developer was wrong, and because of that, you got a fine. This changes the whole liability and indemnification provisions of IT contracts. And that's a big part of our daily business as well, on the developer side as well as on the user side, to negotiate contracts which deal with these kind of new risks and responsibilities because of the AI Act.
Thank you. That's great. I'm conscious of time. Sorry, we haven't answered everyone's questions. We will try to get to the other questions by way of follow-up. I suspect some of them are hard to answer. And how long's a piece of string? Like, what's the UK going to do? We know the direction of travel, but we don't know for sure. So watch this space on that. We'll certainly keep coming back to the topic on these sessions. So to remind you, yeah, if you can give us some feedback afterwards, the survey is going to go around afterwards. That would be great. And then I think just to finish off by saying we've got the next in-house focus on the 30th of April on consumer protection law and enforcement. Instead of looking at the EU this time, it's a transatlantic perspective. So Katrina is advising on compliance with regulation in business relationships with consumers in various contexts, with guests from one of our US best friend firms, Mint, and it's a slightly different time frame to take account of the US involvement. But be great to have you along for that as well. So thank you very much, Sven. Much appreciated for joining us. You'll get
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
well, you'll get everyone on the webinar. You'll get contact details for us both. Do get in touch if you've got any other questions. And thanks for your time this morning.